We grow up through the fog. One morning, Charlie's father said, "I will get a boat, Charlie, and we will all go out and see the islands." So Mrs. Green said she would make some lunch for Charlie and his father, and his mother and his auntie. Then they all got ready to go out to the islands. Their friends, Mrs. Green and Captain Green, came down to see them. "Have a good time," said Mrs. Green. "Goodbye," said Captain Green. When Charlie and father and mother and auntie came to a nice sandy island, they all said that they would like to land on it. They wanted to eat their lunch under the green trees. After everyone had eaten a good lunch, Mother said, "Now let us walk around and see the island." Everyone was ready. Off went Charlie and Mother and father and auntie. They came to a little road that ran through the woods. They walked down this sandy road. All at once the weather was not so fine as it had been in the morning. In the sky there were gray clouds. The wind started to change too. Charlie's father looked at the clouds up in the sky, and he said, "They look like a fog to me. I think we had better go home as fast as we can." So Charlie and his mother and his father and his auntie all walked down the sandy road as fast as they could. They got into the boat and they roared over the water very fast. It had not taken them very long to get started, but the fog had come in faster and faster. Father had to make the engine go very slowly now. The fog was so heavy that he could not see the islands until he was right next to them. Charlie thought it was fun to ride in the fog. When they had gone by 3 or 4 islands, they came toward one with no trees at all on it. At one end, Charlie could see a queer big house. Charlie had never seen a building like this one. Then Charlie heard people talking, so he knew that there were people living on the island. Father thought it would be better to land on this sandy island than to go on. Charlie and father and mother and auntie got out of the boat and walked up the hill toward the queer building. It was a lighthouse. They had landed on a lighthouse island. The lighthouse keeper was not at all surprised to see them on his island. He said, "Hello, where are you caught in the fog? The wind changed so fast." Charlie's father asked the lighthouse keeper where they were and how they could get back to the mainland. "You would have to go very slowly in a fog like this one," said the lighthouse keeper, "and then you could still miss the mainland. I will tell you what to do. You can stay here all night. The fog will be gone by morning, but if it is still heavy, I can take you over in my boat." Charlie's mother and his auntie and his father thought that would be fun to stay on the lighthouse island that night. But they knew that Captain Green and Mrs. Green would think they were caught in the fog. Mother said, "Captain Green and Mrs. Green will think that we were caught in the fog." But the lighthouse keeper said, "Don't be worried about that. Captain Green and Mrs. Green are my friends. I know that they have a telephone at their house. You can telephone them and tell them that you will stay at the lighthouse for the night and that you will be home in the morning." Charlie's father thought it was very queer that there was a telephone on the island. The lighthouse keeper said that each big lighthouse had a telephone. He said that the telephone lines ran under the ocean to the mainland. Then Father telephoned Captain Green. After Father had talked with him, he let Charlie talk to Captain Green on the telephone. "Captain Green, don't be worried. We are going to have a good time at the lighthouse. I like the lighthouse keeper," said Charlie. "That is fine," said Captain Green. "I will see you tomorrow, Charlie." "Goodbye. Have a good time." "Goodbye," said Charlie. Then Charlie and Mother and Father and Auntie went with the lighthouse keeper to see the lighthouse. They all climbed up to the big light. Everything was very clean. The glass of the windows were shining. The lighthouse keeper had to keep the glass shining so that the light would be bright. The light was so bright that it could be seen by people on boats that were many, many miles away. The lighthouse keeper showed Charlie the shutter, and he told Charlie how the shutter worked. The light in the lighthouse has to flash signals to the men on the boats. This shutter makes the signals flash. The shutter is made of glass and has to be kept clean and shining all the time. After that, Charlie went to see the fog bell. The bell was kept ringing all the time in the heavy fog. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Charlie had heard this fog bell ringing about the time he had seen the island from the boat. The lighthouse keeper showed Charlie the storm signal flags. In every lighthouse, the storm signal flags are hung out when a storm is on the way. Sometimes the lighthouse keeper knows that a storm is coming long before it comes. The weatherman telephones him from the mainland. He tells the lighthouse keeper what flag should be hung out. Here are all the storm signal flags that the lighthouse keeper had. Small craft warning, northeast storm, southeast storm, southwest storm, northwest storm, hurricane warning. At last it was time for supper. There were fish for supper. The lighthouse keeper had caught the fish himself, and he told Charlie what fun it was to go fishing. Then it was time for bed. Charlie was very glad to say good night to everyone. He went to sleep the very minute he got into bed. When Charlie opened his eyes, it was morning again. The wind had changed, and it had started to blow the fog out to the ocean where it belonged. Charlie and his father and his mother and his auntie had a fine big breakfast. After breakfast, the wind was blowing, but the fog was gone. The lighthouse keeper wanted to go to the mainland, so he got into his boat. Charlie and father and mother and auntie got into their boat, and they all went back to the mainland together. Goodbye.